Welcome to Sneak Preview. I'm your host, James McGrath Morris. This program is produced by New Mexico Writers, a not-for-profit organization committed to supporting and connecting the literary community in the Land of Enchantment. Here, authors, poets, playwrights, and others have agreed to share with us a work that has not yet been published. In other words, a sneak preview. With us today is Douglas Preston, who's published 36 books, both of nonfiction and fiction, of which 29 have been on the New York Times bestsellers list. He currently serves as president of the Authors Guild, the nation's oldest and largest association of authors and journalists. To learn more about his work, be sure to visit his website, prestonchild.com. Doug, thanks for being with us, and what have you brought to us?
Well, thank you, Jamie. I brought you the beginning of the opening chapter of a novel that I've just finished with Lincoln Child. It's called Bloodless. It's a thriller, and it's going to be published on August 17th. But the reason I chose this particular opening is that it's a very curious opening to a novel because it's not a novel at all. It's nonfiction. What I'm about to read to you is a non-fictional opening to what then becomes a novel. And I don't know if I should even tell you what it is. Let's see if you can guess what real event I'm reading about.
Yeah.
All right. The title of the chapter is Wednesday, November 24th, 1971. Flo Schaffner was not at all happy with the new uniform that Northwest Orient Airlines had imposed on stewardesses, especially the dumb cap with the bill and ear flaps that made her look like Donald Duck. Nevertheless, she stood at the door of Flight 305, Portland to Seattle, with a bright smile, greeting arriving passengers and checking their tickets. She was not displeased at the relatively small number of passengers on the flight. She thought it would be full, this being the day before Thanksgiving. But today, only about a third of the main cabin was occupied, which, in her experience, meant a stress-free flight. As people began to settle into their seats, she and the other flight attendant, Tina Mucklow, began moving from opposite sides of the main cabin, taking drink orders. Schaffner took the rear. One of her first customers was in seat 18C of the Boeing 727, a polite, soft-spoken gentleman of early middle age, wearing a raincoat, gray business suit, white shirt, and black tie. She knew his name. One of her responsibilities in checking tickets was to try to memorize the names of every passenger and their seat assignments. It was usually impossible, but with the plane as empty as it was, today she had managed it. "Can I get you anything to drink, Mr. Cooper?" He politely asked her for a bourbon and 7. When she brought it, he handed her a 20. "Anything smaller?" "Nope." She told him he'd have to wait until later for her to get him change. The pilot, William Scott, whom everyone called Scotty, announced over the intercom for the flight attendants to secure the exits and prepare for takeoff. Schaffner raised the aft stair and then settled in a jump seat next to it, not far from the passenger in 18C. The flight took off precisely on time at 2:50 p.m. for the 30-minute hop to Seattle. As the flight was leveling out and the seatbelt signs were turned off, the passenger in 18C signaled to her. She came over, assuming he wanted another drink, but instead he placed an envelope in her hand. This was something that often happened to Schaffner, a lonely traveler, writing her a note asking to meet for a drink, dinner, or something more. She had learned the best way to handle such approaches was simply not to engage. She thanked the passenger warmly and dropped the envelope in her purse unread. The man leaned toward her with a friendly smile and whispered, "Miss," he said, "you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb." Schaffner wasn't sure she had heard him correctly. She removed the envelope and took out the note. It was printed in felt tip pen in precise capital letters, and it did indeed say, he had a bomb, and that as long as everyone cooperated, nothing bad would happen. Please sit down next to me, he said, taking the note back from her and putting it in his shirt pocket. She did as told, and he unlatched the briefcase in his lap and lifted the lid a few inches. Inside, she could see a bundle of red cylinders with wires attached, nestled next to a large battery. He shut the briefcase and put on a pair of dark glasses. Take this down. She took a pen and envelope from her purse and wrote down a series of instructions. Relay that to the cockpit, he said. Schaffner rose, walked down the aisle, and went into the cockpit. Closing the door behind her, she told the pilot the plane was being hijacked by a man with a bomb. Then, reading from the envelope, she recited the list of what he wanted. So, that's the first chapter. I'm sure most of you have guessed what true incident it refers to. Shortly after these first chapters in the book, the novel called Bloodless moves to the present day. And it is a novel that features our special agent, Pendergast of the FBI, who was investigating a very peculiar case of murder in the city of Savannah, Georgia, in the present day. And you might ask, how are these two things connected? Well, you'll just have to read the book to find out.
Absolutely perfect invitation. I didn't get it until I suddenly heard the name Cooper, and I thought, I'm the age, I remember exactly. So have you ever combined nonfiction with fiction like this?
Yes, we do it frequently, actually. It's kind of fun, you know, more or less, sometimes more and sometimes less. Now, this particular chapter is absolutely accurate. It's taken from firsthand accounts, and everything that I read to you, the conversation and so forth, is all accurate. It's verbatim. We
You know,
didn't
I think
change
the
anything.
settings were particularly real, having read your books, but I never thought of a complete nonfiction entry into a novel. And that's
Yeah, and in another book of mine called Tyrannosaur Canyon, the first chapter is also completely nonfiction. It's taken from transcripts
and I read
of,
it, so I should have known.
of one of the Apollo missions, basically.
Great. Well, listen, thank you very much for being with us today, and I hope our audience will tune in again soon for another installment of Sneak Preview. To learn more about New Mexico writers, be sure to visit our website, nmwriters.org.